Hey everybody, this is Daniel Pika here. I am doing something very different so far from what any of you probably expected. However, if you know me, this is something I was inevitably going to do. Today I want to talk about the very recently released Shadow Generations, which is part of the larger Sonic X Shadow Generations compilation, which is a remaster of the original 2011 Sonic Generations game, which, by the way, I am not going to be covering that in any way today. Good game, decent, not really what I'm here to discuss. I am here to talk about Shadow. Shadow is, and has probably been, my favorite game character for a very long time. It has been a rough road with him, and it's good to see something come out that represents him in the way that I want to see him. So first, let's talk about the story. The story of Shadow Generations is Shadow is going and investigating the Space Colony Ark, which, if you know anything about Shadow, by the way, this is not really going to be a spoiler-heavy video. I am going to talk about the initial, first couple bits of the story, but it's anything, as soon as you start the game, you're going to know this information, so I'm not going to go past the first major boss is where we're going to cut off any narrative stuff. So the way the story starts is that Shadow, still working at Gun, which I appreciate, is going to the Space Colony Ark to investigate an anomaly, and while the events of Sonic Generations are going on and everybody's getting sucked away in time portals, Shadow gets sucked away as well. However, he doesn't encounter the Time Eater like the rest of them do. Instead, he finds Black Doom, the creature responsible for his existence in the first place. And this is where the story takes a big departure away from Sonic Generations, whereas Sonic Generations is a straightforward, pretty traditional story combining the two Sonics, going through time, going through all their past levels, and trying to restore the timeline. Shadow Generations decides to go for a much more interpersonal story. It is about Shadow dealing with his past, which he has done that in his previous games. He dealt with the past in Shadow the Hedgehog, the game. He dealt with his past in Sonic 06. I mean, he even dealt with the past in even his first game, Sonic Adventure 2. So this is very much a story that Shadow is fit to do well. It's not just go through level and see the sights. He is here and he learns some stuff. He develops as a character. I really do not want to get into the spoilers because this is such a phenomenal storyline that they tell with Shadow. I really appreciate them. It's not just cheap fan service that they do. They really take how Shadow has changed over the years. They really take what people loved about him in the original story, and they use this as an opportunity to not only explore Shadow's past, but also give it as a great opportunity for him to move forward, to grow as a character, which you wouldn't really expect in an anniversary game, especially given the plot of the original Sonic Generations being so, whatever.
This chemical plant feels familiar. I'd never forget a smell like this. And that pink water makes me really nervous for some reason.
But speaking of the past, obviously this game is full of its own fan service and is a great celebration of Shadow. And it really is a great celebration of Shadow. There are levels from other Sonic games. The levels that we see are, at least in the first couple worlds, we get Sonic Adventure 2, we get Heroes, we get 06, we even get levels after Generations came out from future games that Shadow appeared in, like Sonic Forces, for example, and those are all really cool options. It's really cool to see. It also plays with the fact that this is time travel. Shadow doesn't have to personally know these levels, but he gets to explore them, and we, as an audience, get to enjoy that fan service of seeing levels from throughout the history, even levels that technically the characters have not been to yet. Separating all of these levels is the white space from Sonic Generations. However, it's been completely revamped and completely overhauled. Instead of being a 2D line, 2D linear plane, it's a fully 3D environment. Now, Shadow Generations is running on the Sonic Frontiers engine, and as soon as you get into the overworld, it's very evident that it is running on Sonic Frontiers map system. And I think that was a phenomenal choice. Sonic Frontiers had a fantastic sense of exploration and a really good ebb and flow to itself, a la, a Zelda game or something like that. And it was really fun to see that be brought forward in a, smaller sandbox style space for Shadow. But I think in some ways it's a little bit more enjoyable since it's not so spread out and it's not so laden with power-ups and collectibles. It's lean, it cuts a lot of the fat out, and it's just a pretty straightforward collectathon experience. And that is, for me, that clicks so well. It very much feels like a Banjo-Kazooie style level or something, akin to like those classic 3D platformers of the GameCube era and 64 era. And for me, that's just icing on the cake there. On top of having the move style of Sonic from Sonic Frontiers, so he has the boost, he has the slam, he has the homing attack, he also has a couple of Shadow's exclusive moves, abilities that we've never really seen in a single player format before, or even just really used in this kind of a degree. So the first one's the Chaos Spear, which was a multiplayer move he had in Sonic Adventure 2, which is awesome. I mean, it's been used other times. This is the first time we've really had the opportunity to utilize it in a playable format. And it very much solves the issue that the original Shadow the Hedgehog game had, is people complained about the guns. So what they did is they basically allowed Shadow to have his guns, but not be a gun. He just shoots a little spear of energy, but it plays as good as you would expect. The gunplay in Shadow the Hedgehog was not the problem, it was just the fact of seeing Shadow with a gun. So we effectively get to have that, but in a more sci-fi style. And that is a really cool way of incorporating past mechanics as well as past levels. Obviously, the levels are going to be the most obvious thing that they're bringing back from classic games, but the fact that the mechanics also get to bring back things from the past is part of what I think is so smart about this game, and why it really is clicking with me so much, is that it doesn't just feel like I'm being rewarded for knowing like wiki facts and like seeing the cutscenes. It feels like, since I've played all of these games, it feels like I'm being rewarded with experiences that I've had in the past. This feels like what I would want Shadow the Hedgehog 2 to play like. In addition to Chaos Spear, you also have Shadow's iconic Chaos Control, which as the meter fills up, it allows Shadow to freeze time, and they do a lot of really creative stuff with that. They do pretty obvious stuff, like obviously all the enemies are stopped, they have environmental hazards stop, they can be used as platforms. That's kind of what you would expect a power like this to do, but there's a lot of subtle things that it does as well that you might not notice immediately. First of all, it freezes the timer, so if you're doing challenges or you're trying to get an S rank, using Chaos Control throughout the level is going to help you slow down the timer, and is honestly a really creative way to incorporate that, because it means throughout the level, as you're preparing and as you're planning out your route, you have to know when to use Chaos Control, not just to freeze the hazards, but also when's the most optimal time, when are you going to get your next Chaos Control meter fill up, that you can use it and gradually bring the timer down. Stuff like that is clever. Stuff like that is going to do wonders for speedrunning and score attack and time attack rank players, and I just love it. On top of that, they do some really cool stuff that you wouldn't really be immediately picking up on. So in Rail Canyon, for example, there's these wind turbines that you use as platforms. However, some of them are actually blocking off items that you would need to get to, and if you freeze time, well, wind can't move when time is frozen, so you can actually use that to get through the obstacle. So it's not just a matter of freezing time, but it's also just a really cool puzzle solving measure. There's also these green little aura areas that you go through when you have Chaos Control, and they're effectively just little shortcuts, very reminiscent of some of the Wisp powers, which, speaking of which, we'll get to Wisp related powers in a second, but they really incorporated these powers in an incredibly smart way. I think that they really evolve the mechanics of the boost formula from Sonic Generations, Sonic Frontiers, and it's a shame in a way that this is a Shadow game, and that some of these powers are exclusive to Shadow, because I think that this might be one of the best playing styles that a Sonic game has ever had. I think that the way that these incorporate puzzle-like elements and incorporate organic gimmicks, these don't feel like they take away from the gameplay or they stop the gameplay. They fully feel like the level design has been planned around with these mechanics in mind. They are smart, they are well crafted, they feel satisfying to play as both a spectacle and also as a puzzle to solve, as something to overcome. And I haven't really felt that in a while. It's especially apparent when you play Sonic Generations first and then you go and you play Shadow Generations. While I don't want to dunk on Sonic Generations, it is definitely a more straightforward, classic approach to its level design, and that certainly has its place. I personally just think that Shadow Generations adds a level of depth and mechanical, like sort of puzzle solving elements that the classic style doesn't really offer. And for me personally, I would love to see future Sonic games incorporate mechanics such as this, even if they're not necessarily Shadow powers, just something that allows this ability. I mean, to be fair, if they just give me an entire Shadow campaign and we just start getting the adventure era where we have Sonic and Shadow and maybe even Silver just showing up, each having slightly different controls, going through the same levels, I'm perfectly fine with that. That's my bread and butter when it comes to the Sonic franchise. I would be perfectly happy with a Sonic 06 style game, but with everybody having good gameplay and no bugs. That would be heaven for me, honestly. So good on you guys. I really appreciate what Sonic Team was able to pull out with the gameplay in this game. Now, the other half of the gameplay is going to be in the white space. The white space, much like in the regular Sonic Generations, is where you get all of the challenge missions. It's going to be where you go and you find your collectibles. However, they really went out of their way to flesh out the white space here, as they have a lot of treasure chests all scattered about, and you need to use the collectibles you get in the main levels in order to unlock these treasure chests. And this is where you get your concept art, this is where you get your soundtracks, this is where you get all of the other goodies and stuff like that. I love that in addition to, like I said, there's all the treasure chests and stuff scattered about, they just have these random bolts lying around, and I'm just like, alright, welcome back, Ratchet and Clank. I thought you were not coming back for a while. It's such a weird choice, and it feels like it has to be deliberate. I just think it's funny as hell. Now, one of the other important things that happens in the white space is this is where you get your new abilities, and this is what I was lightly touching on before when it comes to Wisp-like stuff. Not all of them are as overtly gimmicky as the Wisp. Some of them are just more natural elements, but some of them can be a little bit exaggerated and scripted. They're not too big of a deal, and I do think the level design is structured around them. The first one you get is the poor Black Arm Soldier. Every time you see that particular enemy type, he is going to be used as a platform. You smack the hell out of him, and then you launch him into the air, and you teleport next to him to finish him off. And that launches you forward as a platforming element. That is hilarious. It is over the top. It is edgy. It is being played entirely straight, which is the best part. It's not being used ironically, which is another big thing about this game, is that they don't have to overplay him ironically. They just make Shadow cool. He is cool. Let's stop pretending that Shadow the Hedgehog's not cool. If you're playing Sonic the Hedgehog, then Shadow the Hedgehog's gonna be cool. Anyway, personal therapy venting aside, they use these elements throughout the game. As you go through the white space, you're going to be getting more power-ups as you go through the story. This is where you get them, and it teaches you how to use these elements before they're incorporated into the level design. And as I said, the level design incorporates them pretty well. I think one of the other ones that I got to in the footage was the Manta Ray one, but it's fun to gradually get more abilities that help you access the overworld, as well as being able to bring those abilities into the main levels, and they really add a lot of finesse to the mechanics. Already solid gameplay is made even better by organically baked in mechanics. They don't feel forced, they don't feel crammed in, they just feel like the level was designed with them in mind, and they come across beautifully well. Outside of just playing through the main story levels as you go through, you are also going to need to collect challenge keys, which is one of the holdovers from Sonic Generations. You need to go through the past levels and you need to go and complete some challenges. However, this is a system that has been significantly overhauled from Sonic Generations, much for the better. While you do need to complete 2 challenges per level instead of only 1 like in the original Sonic Generations, there's only 2 challenges per act, which means that it goes by a lot quicker if you're trying to 100%, and also the challenges are really snappy. I felt like in Sonic Generations a lot of the challenges could really drag on for a while and were fairly repetitive. A big thing that the challenges do in this game is that they feel like they really freshen up the level design. You are still going through old assets, you are still going through existing level design, but playing the 2 back to back, it is so much more original in terms of the level design for the challenges in Shadow Generations. It does sometimes feel like you're playing entirely new levels, and I would say that they're a little bit more akin to the alternate acts in Sonic Colors, as Sonic Colors had like 6 acts per level. Because there's so much more you can do mechanically, they really take advantage of Shadow's powers. There's challenges that require you to use Chaos Control, use Chaos Spear, enemy destroying challenges, ring collecting challenges, and these levels feel really smartly made. It feels like the people who designed these levels really wanted you to get the most out of them. It didn't feel like padding, which, as I said, that's some of the Sonic Generations missions could feel like you were padding, like do the exact same level again, but do it in a time attack. I feel like they've been redesigned. They've been almost every challenge that you play in this is entirely new. You're not doing anything you've already done before, and most challenges only last like a minute or so. So even if it does feel a little repetitive, it's over before you even have time to get bored of it. On top of that, every challenge level also has the collectibles that you get. So you have more opportunities to get the symbols that allow you to unlock the treasure chests throughout these levels, as you're able to get one of each in each challenge level. And especially for kids trying to play through, you might not be as good at the main levels, but if you're like, hey, I can do this ring challenge and just get one of each symbol right here, that's a good way to help encourage you to want to 100%, because if you've done all the challenges and you got most of the symbols in all the challenges and then all you have left is the main levels, I mean, then you might as well just 100% the game. So the game encourages you to unlock and collect more by the fact that the challenges are so easy, but also are full of the main collectibles as well. Oh yeah, and one other thing really quick I wanted to mention. It's such a minor change, but it does so much for replayability. When you beat a level or you beat a challenge, you can just go to the pause menu and you can just select it from the menu, and it'll not only teleport you to the gate, so if you're trying to fast travel around the map, you can go there, but also it makes it so much easier. You do not have to sit and scroll through each single level one at a time using the shoulder buttons like you had to do in Sonic Generations, or you have to walk around the map, which that map was already very complicated as it is. So whoever came up with this idea of just the pause menu, I love you. Thank you so much. Once you have collected enough challenge keys, you then move on to the boss gate. And in the first boss, you get to fight the Bio Lizard, which is pretty fun. They actually do a lot throughout all the bosses in the game, and as I said, I don't want to spoil much else of the game, even though the marketing spoiled a lot of it. Every boss has this fun little thing where they start off kind of feeling like the original boss, but then they move on and they have new forms and new phases, and it really throws you for a loop. The game offers a legitimate challenge in these moments. The bosses in Shadow Generations are pretty tough. The whole game in general is pretty tough, but I felt like the bosses were really satisfying to overcome. They really test you to use all of your abilities, use the Chaos Spear, use the Chaos Control. They're just really surprisingly well designed. I could go on, I could gush about how cool the overworld exploration is, I could talk about all the individual references, the collection room with all the Easter eggs and all the references, I could talk about how amazing the story is, but the main thing I want to get across with this is that if you're like me and you love Shadow, but you felt like kind of embarrassed to like Shadow, or that he was too edgy, too cool, because that's what Sega's been sort of promoting for a while, is that, oh man, he's so ironic. Sonic had a whole irony thing in the 2010s that I'll have to do an individual discussion on at some point, but it really kind of felt like Sega didn't really care about Shadow's history, and they only wanted to sort of turn him into this ironic meme edgelord character. And this really shows that Sega not only understands Shadow still, but that they care about him and want to tell the stories that people like about Shadow. They want to do what people need from Shadow. And frankly, to have a game that so succinctly does pretty much everything I could want, I really have no complaints. To be clear, I've beaten the game, I've gone through most of the collectibles at this point. I bought the digital deluxe version, so I've had it for a couple days. I really, really enjoy this game. It personally, it almost makes me cry a little bit. I know it's silly to say, but Shadow's story in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow's story even in Sonic 06 really hit an emotional core with me, and to have that character be so properly respected and to have his history so preserved really means a lot to me. As a long-time Sonic fan, this is honestly everything I could have asked for. I wish it was longer, I wish it wasn't so short, I wish I could get a full game of this, but I think this really shows Sega not only trying new things with the franchise, being more confident in Sonic's larger cast of characters, but it also shows them being willing to experiment more with gameplay and mechanics. And whatever comes after this game's already been scoring amazing. People love this game, and I hope that Sega takes everything that people have been saying about this. I hope they listen to the feedback, and whatever the next mainline Sonic game is, first of all, has Shadow. I mean, come on. Like, we have to have Shadow back around. It's like how modern Dragon Ball can't go 5 seconds without having Vegeta strapped to Goku's hip. As much as, you know, people like to call Shadow a Vegeta, at the very least, if he's gonna be the Vegeta to Sonic's Goku, then use him like it. Have him be in every game. Have him be around, as long as the story necessitates it, of course. The point is that we're close, man. We are this close to getting Sonic Adventure 3. And I know that's been a long pipe dream, but this really makes me feel like they understand what people want out of the Sonic Adventure style, Sonic Adventure 1, 2, and the parts of 06 that worked. You know, give us that. Put the damn chows in. That's the big thing. Put the freaking chows in. Stop teasing us. They'll do everything with chows except put the Chao Garden in the game. And I don't even personally like the Chao Garden that much, but I know everybody else wants it. So I will just give them the damn Chao Garden, Sega. But other than that, this is perfect. As close to perfect. There's never going to be a perfect game in this franchise, but this is as close to what you could have done. This deeply satisfied me. Thank you so much, Sega. And thank you guys for listening. I know this is very rough, a little unscripted, but I just wanted to talk about this. I might come back around and I might do like a deeper dive into the story once the game's been out longer and once more people have glommed onto it, once I've given I might do a second playthrough before I even do another full video on it. But I do want to come back to this game. This honestly could be my new favorite Sonic game. I mean, it's definitely in the top 3 already. It's already gonna be a top game for me. So thank you so much to everyone, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go buy this game. Go buy it now. See ya.
Thanks to all my super mega fans. Super mega Jim Bevan.